Hey there, YouTube. Friendly talking head for Ron Paul. How can there be a rumor about your liking something or someone before you even know it yourself? Well, when it comes to Ron Paul, that's easy. We'll begin with the assumption that the recent YouTube debate was the first time you've ever listened to Dr. Paul. Now, this doesn't mean you have heard him before. It just merely points out the difference between really listening and simply hearing. So on to how could it be that everyone knows you'd love Ron Paul? Well, anyone watching prior videos of yours or read your comment or read your vlog, MySpace, is bound to get an idea of where you're coming from. Despite perhaps you're not knowing who Ron Paul is, those people who know where you're coming from, who've watched Dr. Paul's debates and so forth, they can conclude rather easily that the problems you're having with current or past administrations can and shall see an improvement through a paradigm shift a la Ron Paul platform. The fact is that that last YouTube debate was, in the minds of many supporters, the worst debate of all. In terms of decent questions, fair distribution of time, Dr. Paul was really gypped in that one, and he got some terrible questions. In a nutshell, it appears that there have been about 9 debates ahead of you on this one, and so anyone paying attention to Dr. Paul basically has done what you're doing now. Supporters out there saw the first debate. They went out and did some research, did some digging up and see where Paul was at and how he substantiated his views, what his voting record was, and so forth. And they went, wow, the guy really does what he says he's going to do. He really does what he stands for, and he backs it up. So then they go to the second debate and take what he said there and do the same research. So there's like 9 debates ahead of you, and these debates have done a good job in inspiring people to go out and do some research, which is exactly the point you're at right now. So you can kind of understand how this phenomenon has been building, and it's been building on a very rock-solid foundation, which is a really positive thing. So it hasn't blasted out of the gate like many of these other flamboyant types who've put millions and millions out of their own pockets into their own campaigns, but it's developed very gradually. In addition to the fact that Dr. Paul refuses to accept money from any lobbyists, special interest groups. So all of the people who are doing this digging and researching because they're really loving the message from the debates and so forth, they're the ones putting the money behind him, so it's really cool. Anyway, so you can understand the excitement and why we call this campaign a phenom of a grassroots revolution. And anyone who digs around for the background on this knows that Dr. Paul does what he says he's going to do. So that quality you mentioned, let's go on to that. He speaks very plainly, and this is endearing to everyone. It's called humility. The unique thing about Dr. Paul is he's brilliant, and not just in his long-term effectiveness. You know what I mean? Like producing good results when you have a long time to do so, or can methodically apply yourself over time. No, he's brilliant on the fly, which really makes him a unique individual to watch in an interview or a debate. Because even his impromptu conversations, the ones I've seen, he never ever shies away from a question. He seldom stumbles, and he appeals to the person that's right in front of him. He addresses the person that's right in front of him. He never adjusts his thinking or adjusts his facts and his figures to mechanize the answer to fit or make the person happy. He really is focused, and he just pulls from fact. How did I vote? How was my vote in compliance with the Constitution? How did my vote support the people? Because he never votes to raise taxes. He always votes in accordance with the Constitution. He's plain spoken, but very smart, and not one iota of pretentiousness, not a speck of arrogance. He never talks down to anyone, and even the snottiest journalists who think they know the Constitution, think they know everything about politics just because they're talking heads, it's pretty amazing. But anyway, okay, so onward. Dr. Paul has authored 9 books. He's delivered like 4,000 babies as an OBGYN, and he's been in Congress 10 terms. That's 20 years total. And the reason he appeals to both sides, like you pointed out in your video, he appeals to both sides of the aisle because he is in compliance with the Constitution. If you have here on the right the the Republicans, and on the left, Democrats. Or the Constitution is that high point in the middle. Both parties should strive for the Constitution. Look at WashingtonPost.com, and you can research the various Congresses and find out he voted down party line only 60.9% of the time. In a comparison, Duncan Hunter voted 94% with party line. And Hillary and Obama, they voted like 100%. So once he's president, he's already proven that he can comply with the Constitution, not in a partisan fashion. And so he'll be very hip to the responsibility of what the executive branch is, and bearing in mind all of the separations of power, the legislative versus the executive. Furthermore, how he will be an excellent executive. Not only can he communicate to both sides of the aisle, as already evidenced by his voting record, but his selection of a judiciary will be extremely important to get to that higher level again. None of this pandering and making law from the bench. This has been one of the most critical problems in our society today, is that judges are making law from the bench. And then the lower court judges are not abiding by the Supreme Court justices. A lot of blame goes on the Congress for our problems in this country, when in fact, I believe, a lot of it falls on the judiciary. You asked, who would I vote for? I would vote for Thomas Jefferson, but he's long gone. So the next best thing? Dr. Ronald Ernest Paul. I've been a Republican all of my life until 2004, and I voted the Constitution Party in the primary. Unfortunately, my candidate didn't make the general election ballot, which is no great surprise, and thus I had to vote Libertarian. Here's the one big problem I had with your introduction and my consequential advice. You basically have to get off the fence now. In many states, you are required to register as a Republican 30 days prior to your primary, and you have to vote for Dr. Paul in the primary or he won't make it to the general election. So I like to think that this video and your question can prompt you to actually make a stand and do it now. Look back onto those other 9 debates and make your decision now. There is no more time left. And a bright guy like you ought to be out there in your GOP district, precinct, county, your state, voting for pro-Paul delegates. Become a delegate yourself. Take your sensibilities and turn them into action. Register as a Republican today. People have registered as a Republican and then they get the card back from having done so, and it still puts them as independent or Democrat or whatever. Make sure you follow up and do it now. Good luck.